So this is our introduction to Google Sheets, which is Google Docs version of Excel. Excel is Microsoft's very popular spreadsheet program, and Google has created its own called Sheets. And it's very similar. There are some differences. Excel ultimately is more powerful, but Sheets will be able to do everything that we want to do. And it has some advantages as well, not the least of which is that it's free. So when we want to create a new sheet file, we click on New. We go to Google Sheets, and we will get a screen that looks like this. So first of all, you can see by default, the title of this is Untitled Spreadsheet. So we're going to click in here, and we'll call this, let's say, Sales 2016. Let's say I'm recording the sales of my company for part of 2016. I hit Enter, that registers. So let's take a look at the layout here. So first we have the menu here, which includes some fairly typical things like File, where we can go if we want to copy or rename or move to a different directory. We can also download a file. We can download it as an Excel spreadsheet, or we can download it in these other formats. We can also import files, and we can also upload files when we create new sheets. Edit allows us to undo, redo, cut, copy, typical things. View is freeze allows us to look at only a certain portion of the spreadsheet, which as your spreadsheet gets large, it could be very useful. The grid lines, you can see we can turn on and off. Typically, we'll have them on. Insert, we're going to be using if we want to insert rows or columns or functions or charts, images, links, forms, and we'll get to that later. Format is useful when we want to change how a particular set of cells looks. So for example, if we have numbers that we've entered and we want them to be represented as dollars with dollar sign, then we can choose currency as our format. We could determine whether we want to show it in scientific notation or as a percent, etc. Data is where we go when we want to start to process the data that we have in our spreadsheet. So if we want to sort, if we want to look at only a certain subset of our data, but data that meets certain conditions, that's where we come when we want to set a filter. Pivot table is a more advanced topic, which we may get to. Tools, you probably won't use that much. Add-ons or enrichment things that make Google more powerful. But the main ones you're going to be using are data, format, insert, view, edit file. Then we also have this toolbar here where we again have some fairly typical items for any kind of Google Doc. So we have printing, undoing, redoing, copying the format. We have some formatting for the font. We have formatting for alignment and text color, things like that. But we also have here some things that are a little more specific to sheets. And the first of which is insert chart. So when we get to the point where we're making some graphs of some of our data, we can start that process by clicking on this insert chart. When we want to start filtering by various conditions, we can start that process by clicking on this, the filter. When we want to start inserting functions like average or median or sum or things like that, we can either go look for them here or we can just type them directly into the cells here. So the bulk of what we're looking at is this grid, and you can see it's a series of rectangles called cells. And each one has a name that is given to it by the name of the column that it's in as well as by the name of the row. So for example, clicking right here, you can see it's now outlined in blue. And you can see that this is highlighted, the column name D, as is the row name 4. So this cell we call D4. And that'll be very important because you're going to be referring to other cells by those names as you create formulas and more complex spreadsheets. This up here is the formula bar where it shows us any formulas that we've entered into the cells. And that's important because what we see when we look at the grid here may be different from what we see when we look up here. And we'll look at an example of that, how a formula may produce a certain output, and we want to be able to see both the output and the underlying formula. Okay, So let's take a look at, let's say we say, all right, month, and we're going to have January, and here's a very cool thing that both Google Sheets and Excel can do. It's called autofill. And what autofill does is it recognizes certain kinds of patterns, and then it continues those patterns, and it does it as follows. We click in January, and we see there's a little blue square on the lower right-hand corner of this highlighted cell. When I select that, or put my cursor right over it, it turns into a plus. When I now click and drag that down, I'm going to drag it down to 13, Excel recognized that we had the month January there, and it knew then that when I dragged it down, it used this autofill to complete the months of the year. We'll see many more examples of that. It's a very powerful tool that you will want to use frequently. So let's say we have some sales, and let's say these are in thousands, and just typing in some numbers arbitrarily here. And you can see I just type it, hit enter, and that takes me to the next cell. If I want to go over to the next column, I can just use the arrow keys, or I can use tab. So now we have some basic, we'll call this sales, and I have a basic little set of data here. So suppose I want to do a couple things. First thing, I want to figure out the total. Okay, so we'll call this total. We just type that in. Now we're going to enter our first formula, and this formula is equals B2 plus B3 plus B plus B4 plus B5 plus B6 plus B7. And we could keep on doing that. And for example, if I stop right now, Excel Sheets is going to just give me the totals for B2 plus B3 plus B4 plus B5 plus B6. And I just got tired of typing it, and I'm going to show you a faster way to do it. But when we click into this cell, notice here we have an actual number, which represents the sum of B2, B3, B4, B5, B6. But up here in the formula bar, you can see what the actual formula that we entered in is. And that makes it a lot easier to know what's going on when we look at our spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to replace this, which certainly is it's a perfectly valid way of doing it. It's just not efficient. And I'm going to replace it with a different formula. And again, a formula has to start with equal. I'm going to type sum, and then in parentheses, I'm going to give it the cell range, and it starts at cell B2. And then I use a colon to designate I want to enter another cell that's going to designate the end of the range of cells. So B13. And you can see those are now highlighted here. And I'm going to close it with another parenthesis. And you can see it's all highlighted here in this orangish color. And now I hit enter. And now I have my number here, 396, which represents the sum of the cells B2 to B13. So now what's nice if I say, oh, I made a mistake, I changed this. Notice that the value here got updated from 396 to 401. So that's just a very basic introduction to how you could start to set up a sheet, enter some text, enter some numbers, and then start to do some computations using those numbers. We'll get a lot more into that in our next video.